Toyota's 3S-GE was the best engine, Honda won. Anyway, Toyota built the Beam's 3S-GE to be their ultimate naturally aspirated four-cylinder. 210 horsepower from 2.0 liters, 10,500 RPM redline. Technology borrowed directly from Formula One. And then they sold maybe 20,000 units total before killing the entire platform. This wasn't failure. This was Toyota building an engine so good, it exposed how profit-driven the rest of their lineup had become. Let's get into it. The engine formula. One technology built. January 1998. Toyota's Higashi-Fuji Technical Center. Chief Engineer Nobuaki Katayama reviews final validation data for the 5th generation 3S-GE destined for the Altezza RS 200. The numbers on screen represent everything Toyota learned from decades of motorsport engineering concentrated into a production engine. 210 horsepower at 7,600 RPM. 2.0 liters naturally aspirated. That's 105 horsepower per liter. But the real achievement isn't peak power, it's how the engine delivers it. The Beam system, breakthrough engine with advanced mechanism system, featured technology that production four-cylinders had no business containing. Variable valve timing on both intake and exhaust cams. Continuously variable intake runner length controlled electronically. Individual throttle bodies feeding each cylinder through a plenum designed using computational fluid dynamics, borrowed from Toyota's F1 program. The construction was obsessive. Aluminum block with cast iron sleeves, forged crankshaft and connecting rods. Pistons designed with valve reliefs deep enough to allow extreme cam timing, overlap, without valve to piston contact. Dual balance shafts eliminating vibration so completely the engine felt smoother at 8,000 RPM than most engines feel at idle. But here's what separated the Beam's 3S-GE from every other high-performance Toyota engine. The redline was 10,500 RPM, not a theoretical maximum, a hard fuel cut that you could hit repeatedly all day without mechanical sympathy required. Toyota had built a production four-cylinder that revved higher than Ferrari's Flat 12 from the Testarossa. That redline wasn't marketing. Independent testing by Best Motoring in Japan confirmed the engine would hold 10,500 RPM indefinitely. Sustained high RPM operation didn't cause oil pressure loss, didn't overheat, didn't develop any of the mechanical sympathy requirements that plagued other high-revving engines. Toyota had solved the fundamental problem that limited naturally aspirated performance. They'd built an engine that rewarded aggressive driving without punishing it mechanically. And then, they barely told anyone about it. The market positioning disaster. The Beams. 3S-GE launched in the Altezza RS 200 in October 1998. Toyota's plan was simple. Create a compact sports sedan that could compete with BMW's 3 Series while showcasing Toyota's performance engineering capabilities. The execution was brilliant. The Altezza featured rear-wheel drive, perfect 50-50 weight distribution, double wishbone suspension front and rear, and the Beam's 3S-GE screaming to 10,500 RPM. This was Toyota building a driver's car without compromise. The price in Japan was approximately 2.8 million yen, roughly $23,000 US at 1998 exchange rates. For that money, you got an engine with Formula One derived technology, a chassis tuned by Toyota's racing division, and performance that embarrassed cars costing twice as much. And almost nobody bought it. The first-year sales target was 30,000 units. Toyota sold 18,000. The problem wasn't the car, the problem was positioning. In Japan, the Altezza competed with Nissan Skylines and Subaru Impreza WRXs, turbocharged all-wheel drive sedans, making similar power with more low-end torque and better bad weather capability. The Beam's 3S-GE made its power at 7,600 RPM. The turbo competition made peak torque at 3,000 RPM. For daily driving and traffic, the turbocharged alternatives felt faster even when they weren't. In export markets sold as the Lexus IS 300, Toyota didn't even offer the Beam's 3S-GE. North American and European customers got the 2 JZ-GE Inline 6 instead. The engine Toyota specifically developed for performance enthusiasts was deemed too niche for markets where performance cars actually sold in volume. Toyota had built the Beam's 3S-GE for enthusiasts who valued high RPM, naturally aspirated character. Then they sold it in a market dominated by turbocharged torque and priced it against all-wheel drive alternatives that offered more practical performance. The result was predictable. Sales collapsed after the initial enthusiast rush. By 2001, Toyota was building fewer than 5,000 Altezza RS 200s annually. The Beam's 3S-GE, an engine representing millions in development costs and bleeding-edge technology, was dying from market positioning failure. The aftermarket that proved Toyota's restraint. While Toyota's bean counters were panicking about Altezza sales, something remarkable was happening in Japanese tuning shops. The aftermarket was discovering that Toyota had deliberately limited the Beam's 3S-GE's output, despite building it to handle significantly more. TRD, Toyota's in-house tuning division, released a Sports ECU in 1999 that raised the redline to 11,000 RPM and optimized fuel and ignition timing. Result, 225 horsepower, 15 more than stock. From software and allowing the engine to rev higher, no hardware changes needed. That revealed Toyota's strategy. The Beam's 3S-GE was capable of higher output from the factory. Toyota had deliberately limited it to 210 horsepower and 10,500 RPM redline to maintain separation from potential future variants and protect engine longevity for average customers. HKS in Japan went further. They developed a complete package in 2000, aggressive camshafts with more lift and duration, ported cylinder head, individual throttle body optimization, and standalone engine management. Result, 255 horsepower at 8,200 RPM. Still naturally aspirated, still on stock block and internals. The engine wasn't just surviving these modifications, it was thriving. No bottom-end failures, no oil pressure issues, no cooling problems. The Beam's 3S-GE handled modifications that would destroy lesser engines without complaint. Then tuners tried forced induction. Blitz built a turbocharged Beam's 3S-GE in 2001, running 8 pounds of boost on an otherwise stock engine. Result, 340 horsepower at 7,000 RPM. The stock bottom end didn't just survive, it performed reliably enough that Blitz offered a warranty on the kit. By 2003, built Beam's 3S-GE engines were exceeding 450 horsepower with larger turbochargers and forged internals. The engine Toyota had positioned as a naturally aspirated purist choice was proving capable of turbocharged performance that approached the legendary 3S-GE TE rally engine. Former Toyota engineer Takahashi Hiroshi, speaking in a 2015 interview, explained the over-engineering. "We designed the Beam's 3S-GE for sustained motorsport use at Formula One RPM levels. That meant building strength we knew street customers would never need. But we also knew the aftermarket would discover it. We wanted the engine to succeed even when customers modified it beyond factory specifications." This wasn't accidental over-engineering. Toyota had deliberately built the Beam's 3S-GE with massive overhead, knowing enthusiasts would push it beyond factory limits. They'd created an engine that could handle whatever modifications tuners threw at it, and then they killed it anyway. The corporate decision that ended everything. 2005. Toyota's product planning committee reviews the Altezza program. Sales have stabilized at around 4,000 units annually in Japan. Export markets don't want it. The Beam's 3S-GE has developed a cult following among enthusiasts. But cult followings don't justify production costs. The numbers were brutal. Development costs for the Beam's 3S-GE and Altezza platform exceeded $300 million. Toyota had sold approximately 80,000 total units across 7 years. Per unit development cost recovery, nearly $4,000. That's before manufacturing costs, marketing, or dealer margins. Meanwhile, the Camry was selling 400,000 units annually in North America alone. The Corolla exceeded 1 million units worldwide. These were the cars that generated profit. These were what Toyota's future depended on. The decision was made. The Altezza would be discontinued after the 2005 model year. The Beam's 3S-GE would die with it. No successor, no evolution. Just termination of a program that proved Toyota could build brilliant enthusiast cars, but couldn't sell them profitably. The last Altezza RS 200 rolled off the Tahara plant assembly line in July 2005. Total Beam's 3S-GE production across all applications, approximately 23,000 units. An engine representing bleeding-edge technology and Formula One derived engineering had sold fewer units than the Camry sold in 2 weeks. Former Toyota executive Akio Toyoda, who would later become company president, reflected on this in a 2012 interview. The Altezza and Beam's engine represented what Toyota's engineers wanted to build, but they didn't represent what customers wanted to buy in sufficient numbers. That's a painful lesson. Excellence isn't enough if the market doesn't value what makes something excellent. That admission captured everything wrong with the Beam's 3S-GE's fate. Toyota had built an excellent engine. The market didn't care, and Toyota chose not to fight for it. The comparison that exposes the tragedy. If you're realizing Toyota abandoned brilliance for profit, hit that subscribe button, because comparing what the Beam's 3S-GE achieved versus what replaced it shows exactly what was lost. The Beam's 3S-GE, 2.0 liters, 210 horsepower, 10,500 RPM redline, naturally aspirated, Formula One technology, individual throttle bodies, dual VTEC. The second generation Lexus IS 250 that replaced it in 2005. 2.5 liters, 204 horsepower, 6,400 RPM redline, naturally aspirated, conventional V6, nothing exotic. Toyota replaced an engine making 105 horsepower per liter with one making 81.6 horsepower per liter, replaced a 10,500 RPM redline with 6,400, replaced Formula One technology with corporate parts bin components. The market response? The IS 250 sold significantly better than the IS 200 with Beam's 3S-GE ever had. Because most customers didn't care about specific output or redlines. They cared about smooth V6 refinement and brand perception. The IS 250 felt more Lexus than the rev-happy four-cylinder ever could. Toyota had learned the wrong lesson from the Beam's 3S-GE. Not that they needed to market it better or position it correctly, but that enthusiast-focused engineering didn't generate profit commensurate with development costs. So they stopped building enthusiast engines. They focused on refinement, efficiency, and features that mass-market customers actually valued. The Beam's 3S-GE became a cautionary tale used in Toyota product planning meetings. Remember what happens when we build what engineers want instead of what customers will buy. The platform that kept the dream alive. While Toyota abandoned the Beam's 3S-GE in production cars, something unexpected happened. The aftermarket refused to let it die, and one application in particular kept the engine's legend growing. The Toyota Altezza/Lexus IS platform became the foundation for one of the most successful drift car platforms worldwide. The rear-wheel drive layout, perfect weight distribution, and engine bay that could accommodate numerous power plants made it ideal for motorsport applications. Drifters discovered they could swap Beam's 3S-GE engines into earlier generation cars, or drop turbocharged 3S-GTE rally engines into Altezzas, or install 1JZ and 2JZ inline sixes. The chassis Toyota built for the Beam's 3S-GE became more valuable than the engine itself. But here's what's remarkable. In Japanese grassroots motorsport, many competitors kept the Beam's 3S-GE because the high RPM naturally aspirated character created advantages in certain applications. The instant throttle response, the linear power delivery, the ability to hold the engine at 9,000 RPM through corners without turbo lag or boost management complications. Formula Drift Japan competitor Daigo Saito ran a Beam's 3S-GE powered Altezza from 2006 through 2009. Not because he couldn't afford a turbocharged swap, because the Beam's engine's characteristics suited his driving style better than forced induction alternatives. That endorsement from professional drivers validated what Toyota's engineers had built. The Beam's 3S-GE wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a legitimately superior engine for specific applications. Toyota had created something special, they just couldn't figure out how to sell it. The modern context that makes it worse. Fast forward to 2025, Toyota's current performance lineup consists entirely of turbocharged engines or hybrids. The GR Corolla uses a turbocharged 3-cylinder. The GR Supra uses BMW's turbocharged inline-6. The GR86 is the only naturally aspirated performance car, using Subaru's flat 4. Toyota doesn't build high-performance naturally aspirated engines anymore. They've outsourced performance to partners or adopted forced induction. The engineering capability that created the Beam's 3S-GE no longer exists within Toyota's current development structure. Could Toyota build a modern equivalent? Technically, yes. They have the engineering resources, but economically, it makes no sense. Emissions regulations favor forced induction. Customers prefer low-end torque over high RPM power. Development costs for naturally aspirated engines that meet current standards exceed what the market will pay. The Beam's 3S-GE represented peak naturally aspirated 4-cylinder development. Toyota reached that peak in 1998, and they've been descending ever since. Not because they lost the capability, but because the market doesn't reward that capability anymore. Clean Altezza RS200S with original Beams, 3S-GE engines now sell for $15,000 to $25,000 in Japan. That's appreciation from their original $23,000 price point, but nowhere near the collector status of other limited production Toyota performance cars. Why? Because the Beam's 3S-GE, despite its technical brilliance, never achieved cultural icon status. It was too niche, too briefly produced, too poorly marketed. The engine died before enough enthusiasts discovered what made it special. That's the ultimate tragedy. Toyota built an engine worthy of legendary status, then killed it before it could become a legend. The lesson: Toyota refuses to acknowledge. The Beam's 3S-GE's failure taught Toyota that enthusiast engineering doesn't generate profit proportional to development costs. But there's another lesson Toyota refuses to acknowledge. They never tried to make it succeed. The Beam's 3S-GE was offered in exactly one model in Japan, the Altezza RS 200. It never appeared in the MR2. It was never offered in international markets. Toyota developed a world-class engine and gave it exactly one application in one market for 7 years. Compare this to Honda's K2OA, which appeared in Integrass, Civics, Accords, and various other applications across multiple markets. Honda maximized their engineering investment by spreading the K2OA across their lineup. Toyota built the Beams 3S-GE for one car and wondered why it didn't generate profit. If Toyota had offered the Beams 3S-GE in a lightweight MR2 successor, a Celica GT4 with naturally aspirated focus, international market Lexus IS models, Toyota, 86 predecessor, the development costs would have been amortized across significantly more units. The engine would have reached enthusiasts in markets that actually valued high RPM naturally aspirated performance. And the Beams 3S-GE might have achieved the commercial success its engineering deserved. Instead, Toyota built it for one application, marketed it poorly, positioned it badly, and then blamed the engine when it didn't sell. That's not the engine failing. That's corporate failure to capitalize on what engineering created. Why it still matters. The Beams 3S-GE matters because it represents the last time Toyota built a performance engine without compromise. Every decision was made for engineering excellence rather than cost optimization. Formula One technology in a production 4-cylinder. 10,500 RPM redline because that's what the engineering allowed. Individual throttle bodies because they delivered the best throttle response. Modern Toyota performance engines are excellent within their constraints, but they're built with constraints the Beams 3S-GE ignored. Cost targets, parts bin sharing, platform flexibility, emissions compliance designed in from the start rather than worked around. The Beams 3S-GE was built by engineers who were told to create the best naturally aspirated 4-cylinder possible. Modern Toyota engines are built by engineers told to create the most profitable engine that meets regulatory requirements while satisfying market research data. That's the difference between engineering excellence and corporate product development. The Beams 3S-GE represents what Toyota could build when excellence was the priority. Everything since represents what they choose to build when profit is the priority. And that choice reveals what Toyota values, not what enthusiasts want, not what showcases engineering capability, but what generates maximum profit from minimum investment. The Beams 3S-GE was too perfect to profit from. So Toyota killed it and built engines optimized for spreadsheets instead of smiles. The uncomfortable truth. Toyota built the Beams 3S-GE to prove they could create a world-class naturally aspirated performance engine. They succeeded completely. 210 horsepower from 2.0 liters, 10,500 RPM redline, Formula One technology in a production application. Engineering excellence that enthusiasts still celebrate 27 years later. Then Toyota looked at sales figures and decided excellence wasn't profitable enough. They killed the engine after 7 years and 23,000 units. Not because it failed mechanically, not because customers who bought it were unhappy, but because not enough customers bought it to justify continued production. The Beams 3S-GE proved that naturally aspirated 4-cylinders could deliver performance and character that forced induction couldn't match. Then market forces and corporate priorities killed it anyway. Today, the Beams 3S-GE exists in maybe 15,000 surviving vehicles worldwide. An engine that represented peak naturally aspirated development. That featured technology production 4 cylinders had no business containing. That could rev to 10,500 RPM all day without complaint. And Toyota will never build anything like it again. Not because they lost the capability, but because the world that valued what the Beams 3S-GE delivered doesn't exist anymore. Efficiency matters more than character. Profit matters more than excellence. And corporate strategy matters more than enthusiast passion. The Beams 3S-GE was too perfect to profit from. So, Toyota abandoned it and built engines optimized for markets that don't care about 10,500 RPM redlines. That's not engineering failure. That's corporate reality killing what made cars worth loving. The Beams 3S-GE was perfect. The market didn't care. And Toyota chose profit over passion. Did you know the Beams 3S-GE was this deliberately abandoned? And does knowing Toyota could have saved it, but chose not to change how you view the brand? Drop a comment below. And if this makes you wonder what other manufacturers are killing their best engines for corporate strategy, smash that subscribe button. This is the JDM Engine Archive. We'll see you in the next one.